oftentimes the question I get is, how do I know if I have PCOS? Like, how would I even garner whether or not to be suspicious of this kind of diagnosis? And the reality is, this is something that some would say, okay, it's overdiagnosed, because just given these qualifications, if we were going to use like the Rotterdam criteria, which is really the gold standard, it's how PCOS is diagnosed, you only need 2 of these 3 markers. So, I mean, like, you could have someone who is experiencing androgen excess as well as insulin resistance, and, technically they would be meeting the criteria of being diagnosed with PCOS. And I think that's oftentimes the case in the world of like physique sports and fitness is, at least in my sample, I get a lot of individuals who are coming to me who are suspicious that they're experiencing PCOS. Yet when I start to ask questions about like their PED use, more specifically the use of anabolics, it becomes very clear that, not clear to me because this is something I know, but it becomes very clear really to the individual, these signs of androgenicity, these signs of hirsutism, acne, changes in vocal pitch, in voice. These are things that are overlapping from someone who uses anabolics in excess for long durations, as well as PCOS. And typically, if I look, at like I'm always looking at their intake form, but if on their intake form, if they're like, yeah, you know what, I have been running Anavar for an extensive amount of time throughout last season, and I just still have it in because I don't really know when to pull it. But at the same time, I'm not sure why I'm experiencing these signs that what appear to be like, having researched it a little bit, having seen, others in similar positions, it seems like it might be PCOS. Typically, my first line of intervention is like, hey, or let's just call it a recommendation or suggestion, if you will, grain of salt. I think that's what I want to categorize it as. First thing I'm going to want to do is say like, hey, let's come off the drugs and see if these signs of androgen excess, if those are still present. Now, the other case in which I see, at least the individuals that come to me who suspect they have PCOS or, inherently are worried, worried about some kind of hormonal imbalance that lends to issues in weight loss, insulin resistance, and, some form of amenorrhea, whether that be hypothalamic amenorrhea or, I would say like exogenous based amenorrhea rooted from an exogenous catalyst. Let's just call it that. Those individuals who are not already using some kind of AAS typically have an extensive history of using some kind of hormonal birth control. Now, in this case, it's not my place to be like, hey, just like stop your birth control. But for individuals who are suspicious of, maybe the birth control itself is having a negative impact, on the current physique or on their physique goals, that's typically something I would like to see them do. I would like to see them make efforts towards not having the hormonal birth control in place. And it's not to say they have to go off birth control entirely. It's just a matter of finding a type of birth control that better suits their needs of, why are they having the birth control in to begin with, that doesn't have a negative impact on their physique goals, on their body composition. So I think the thing to understand with PCOS is that in some cases there are it's mostly androgen dominance, and some are mostly insulin resistance in terms of like the presenting symptoms. And you can also attest that there are genetic components to this, and really that's where it becomes difficult to receive an accurate diagnosis. I'm someone myself, I've had low test for majority of my life. It just varying degrees of insulin resistance, but also, you can look at family history as opposed to lifestyle. And I've been in and out of contest prep at various points in the last decade-ish, last 8 years. Yeah, that would make sense. That would add up. Yet at different points, I've gone to doctors, some who have, I guess, singular, one who's been like, oh, I think you have PCOS. I'm like, I disagree. Like, on what criteria are you using to diagnose this? Oh, well, you're amenorrheic, so we should screen you for PCOS. Okay, well, my androgens are very low and I'm not insulin resistant. Still think I have PCOS? Oh, you do? Okay. Like, the thing is, like, when it comes to female endocrinology, when it comes to really seeking clarity around like what the underlying problem is, I get it. There are a lot of doctors who are going to turn to what they're taught, and of course they should rely on their formal education to come to these diagnoses. But I think it can be problematic in the case where you have standards in which we're making these diagnoses that are not clear cut and leave room for ambiguity. Now,